It was a Saturday, I remember that clearly. The sun was high in the sky, it painted long shadows across the living room floor. The house was quiet, too quiet perhaps. My parents were out for the afternoon. They had errands to run, they said, groceries to buy, the usual weekend things. I was alone, or so I believed. This was my kingdom for a few hours, a rare chance to be the master of my own small world. A world usually filled with rules and watchful eyes. But not today. Today was different. Teenage restlessness is a funny thing, it bubbles up inside you, like fizzy water with nowhere to go. I paced the rooms, from the kitchen to the den, then back again. I tried reading a book. The words just swam on the page. I tried watching television. The shows felt dull, lifeless. There was an itch I couldn't scratch. A feeling that something was waiting, something hidden, something just for me. It was the kind of feeling that often led to trouble. I knew it, but I couldn't shake it. My dad's closet was usually off limits. It was his space, a small room filled with his clothes, his shoes, the faint scent of his aftershave. I rarely went in there, but today the quiet house seemed to whisper. It urged me forward, deep in the back, on the top shelf, hidden behind old sweaters. There it was, a small wooden box, dark brown, almost black. It had a tarnished brass latch. I had never seen it before. It felt old. It felt secret. My heart began to beat a little faster. Curiosity is a powerful current. It can pull you into deep waters. I stood there for a moment, staring at the box. A voice in my head said, "Don't." It was the voice of caution, the voice of my father. But another voice whispered, "Look." It was the voice of adventure, the voice of the unknown. I reached up. My fingers brushed against the cool wood. I took it down carefully. It was heavier than I expected. The thrill of the forbidden, it was a dangerous kind of sweet. I decided I had to know what was inside. The latch was stiff, it didn't want to give. I carried the box to my room, my own quiet space. I sat on the floor. I tried to pry the latch open with my fingernail. It wouldn't budge. I found a small paperclip. I bent it straight, then I poked and prodded at the tiny keyhole. It felt like I was defusing a bomb. My hands were a little shaky. Was this wrong? Yes, definitely wrong, but I couldn't stop. Not now. After a few minutes, a tiny click. The sound echoed in the silent room. The latch sprang open. I lifted the lid slowly. A puff of air escaped. It smelled of old paper. And something else. Something faintly sweet like dried flowers or old perfume. My heart was thumping. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, there were letters, tied with a thin silk ribbon, yellowed photographs, a small, tarnished silver locket, and a tiny folded piece of paper, like a secret note. These were not just things, they were pieces of a life I didn't know, my father's life, before me, before Mom. I picked up a photograph, a young man looking so much like my dad, but younger, happier, somehow, and sadder too. He was with a woman I didn't recognize. Her smile was bright, they looked happy together. I opened one of the letters. The handwriting was elegant, full of words of love and longing. I was lost in this other world, this secret history. My father was not just my father, he was someone else too, someone with a past I never imagined. I forgot where I was, I forgot the risk. Then a sound, a floorboard creaking in the hallway. My blood turned to ice. I looked up. He was supposed to be out, for hours. But there he was, standing in my doorway, my dad, his car keys still in his hand, his face. I will never forget his face. It wasn't angry, not at first. It was something else, something that made my stomach drop. The world didn't just stop, it shattered into a million pieces, right there on my bedroom floor, among the scattered secrets of his past. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird, beating against my ribs. I could feel the blood drain from my face. One moment I was a detective, uncovering a mystery. The next, I was a criminal, caught in the act. The air in the room grew thick, heavy. I couldn't breathe. I wanted the floor to open up, swallow me whole, but it didn't. It just held me there, pinned by his gaze, my father's gaze. It was a look I had never seen before, and never wanted to see again. The objects in my hands, the old letters, the faded photographs, they suddenly felt like burning coals, searing my skin. Just moments ago they were fascinating, windows into an unknown world. Now, they were evidence. Proof of my betrayal, his private life, his hidden memories, spread out before me, violated by my prying eyes. My curiosity had turned into a weapon, and I had used it against him, against the person I trusted most, and who trusted me, or so I had thought. His eyes, they weren't shouting, they weren't accusing, not with anger anyway. There was something deeper there, something that cut me more than any shout could have. Was it disappointment? Yes, that was part of it, a profound, aching disappointment. But there was more. Hurt, a deep, personal hurt, as if I had struck him, physically. He looked at the scattered contents of the box. Then his eyes met mine, and in that look, I saw a reflection of my own transgression, my own failure. The silence stretched. It grew, filling every corner of the room, every corner of my mind. I wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain. But what could I say? I was curious. I didn't mean any harm. The words felt hollow, pathetic, useless. I was frozen, unable to move, unable to think clearly, just caught in a web of my own making. The bright Saturday afternoon had turned dark. The quiet house now echoed with an unspoken accusation and my own overwhelming shame. After what felt like an eternity, my dad moved. He took a slow step into the room, then another. Each footfall on the wooden floor sounded like a hammer blow. My eyes were fixed on him. I braced myself for the storm, for the yelling, for the punishment I knew I deserved. I had violated his most private space. I had unearthed secrets he clearly wanted to keep buried. There was no excuse, no justification. I waited for the anger to erupt, for the dam of his composure to break. But he didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice. He walked over to where I sat, frozen on the floor. He looked down at the scattered letters, the photographs, the small locket. His face was unreadable now, a mask of something I couldn't quite decipher, sadness perhaps, or maybe resignation. He knelt slowly, his joints creaked a little. He didn't look at me, not then. His gaze was fixed on the pieces of his past, my stolen glimpses of his hidden life. The silence was heavier than any words could be. The question hung in the air between us. Why? I could see it in the slight furrow of his brow, in the way his lips were pressed into a thin line. But he didn't say it aloud. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe the answer was too obvious, or too painful. Or maybe he knew that any answer I gave would be insufficient. A flimsy excuse for a deep betrayal. He picked up one of the letters, held it for a moment, then placed it gently back into the box. His movements were deliberate, careful. I searched for words, any words, an apology, an explanation, a plea for forgiveness. My mind was a blank canvas, scrawled with panic and regret. My tongue felt thick, useless. "Dad, I started. My voice was a hoarse whisper. It cracked. He didn't look up. He just continued to gather the scattered pieces of his life. His silence was a judgment, more powerful than any lecture. It told me everything I needed to know about the depth of my mistake, the trust I had shattered. Section 5. Echoes in the hallway. He closed the lid of the wooden box. The click of the latch echoed again, but this time, it sounded final, like a door slamming shut. Not just on the box, but on something between us. He stood up, the box held carefully in his hands. He looked at me then, just for a second. His eyes were still filled with that deep, unreadable emotion. It wasn't anger, it was something quieter, something that settled in my bones like a chill. He didn't need to say a word. His silence spoke volumes. Then he turned and walked out of my room. He didn't slam the door, he didn't rush. His footsteps were steady, measured. As he walked down the hallway, each step seemed to echo. Louder and louder in the suddenly vast emptiness of the house. I listened until the sound faded, until there was only the ringing in my ears, and the heavy thumping of my own guilty heart. He was gone, and he had taken a part of me with him, the part that believed I could do no wrong, the part that felt safe. The immediate aftermath was suffocating. My room, usually my sanctuary, felt like a cage. The walls seemed to be closing in. The air was thick with my transgression. I replayed the scene over and over in my mind. The click of the lock, the discovery, his face in the doorway. Each replay was a fresh wave of shame and fear. What would happen now? What would he do? What would he say? The house that had felt like my kingdom a short while ago now felt alien, hostile, violated by my own actions. I waited. For the explosion. For the inevitable confrontation. The punishment. Surely it would come. He would come back. He would yell. He would ground me for life. That's what fathers did, right? But the hours ticked by, slowly, painfully, and only silence remained. A heavy, oppressive silence. It was worse than shouting. It was a silence that allowed my imagination to run wild, to conjure up all sorts of terrible scenarios. The quiet was a torment, a constant reminder of what I had done. It might have been hours later, or perhaps it was the next day. Time had lost its usual rhythm, it stretched and compressed, pulled by the weight of my anxiety. Then I heard his voice calling my name, not harshly, not with anger, just my name, quietly, from downstairs. My stomach twisted into a knot. This was it, the moment of reckoning. I walked down the stairs. Each step felt like lead. My legs were trembling. I was ready for the worst. I deserved the worst. We sat at the kitchen table, the place where we usually ate breakfast, shared stories, laughed. But today, there was no laughter, only a heavy sadness. It hung in the air between us like a thick fog. He didn't look angry, he looked tired. And older, as if the events of yesterday had aged him. He gestured for me to sit. I sat, my hands were clasped tightly in my lap. I kept my eyes down, unable to meet his gaze directly. The silence returned for a moment, but this time it felt different, expectant. Then he began to talk. And it wasn't what I expected. He didn't talk about my punishment, he didn't list my faults. He talked about privacy, about how everyone has a right to their own thoughts, their own memories, their own secret spaces. He talked about trust, how it's like a delicate thread, easy to break, hard to mend. He spoke softly, his voice calm, but his words carried immense weight. They landed on me, one by one, each one a lesson, each one a truth I couldn't ignore. And then, he did something I never imagined. He talked about the box. He explained some of what was inside. He told me about a time in his life, a time of youthful dreams and painful losses, things a child isn't always ready to hear about their parents. Or so he had thought. He didn't share everything. Some doors, he said, remained closed. But he opened one. Just a little. And in doing so, he opened a door to understanding, not just about him, but about life and its complexities. It wasn't easy after that conversation. Trust, once broken, is like a shattered vase. You can try to glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always show. My father was hurt, deeply, and I was ashamed, deeply. The lightness we once shared was gone, replaced by a carefulness, a hesitation. We moved around each other like two dancers who had forgotten the steps. The house still felt quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. A quiet filled with unspoken thoughts, and the effort of mending. I knew I had to earn back his trust. It wouldn't be given freely, not anymore. It started with small steps. I did my chores without being asked. I was home on time, every time. I tried to be more open, more honest in our conversations, even when it was difficult. I apologized again, sincerely, not just for getting caught, but for the act itself, for violating his privacy, for causing him pain. He listened. He didn't always respond much, but he listened, and that was a start, a fragile beginning. Through this slow process, I began to see my father differently. He was no longer just dad, the authority figure, the provider, the rule maker. I saw him as a person, a man with his own history, his own past, filled with joys and sorrows I had never known. The contents of that box, even the parts he didn't explain, hinted at a life lived before me, a life with its own complexities, its own vulnerabilities. This new perspective didn't excuse my actions, but it helped me understand him better. As a human being, our relationship changed. It had to. It couldn't go back to what it was before. That innocence was lost. But something new began to grow in its place, something perhaps stronger, deeper. It was a relationship built less on assumption, and more on a hard-won understanding. The conversations became more honest, more real. We didn't always agree, but we listened, really listened. The bridge between us was being rebuilt, slowly, carefully, plank by plank, with the timber of forgiveness and respect. The first lesson was carved deep: respect for boundaries. Some doors are closed for a reason, not to hide things maliciously, but to protect what is private, what is sacred, what belongs to another. I learned that curiosity, untamed by wisdom, can be destructive. It can lead you into places you don't belong. It can cause pain to people you love. My father's closet, his box, they were his, not mine. And that simple truth was a powerful lesson in respecting the personal space of others. A lesson I carry with me still. The second lesson followed closely. Curiosity needs wisdom. It's not wrong to want to know, to understand. But there's a way to seek knowledge, a respectful way. Not everything needs to be uncovered, especially not by force or by stealth. Some stories are for others to tell, in their own time, in their own way. My prying had stolen that from my father, the chance to share his past on his own terms. I learned that true understanding comes from patience, and from listening, not from secret searches. The third lesson was about consequences. They are real, they are inevitable. They don't always arrive with a loud bang. Sometimes they come silently, in the form of a changed look in someone's eyes, a strained silence, a broken trust. My punishment wasn't being grounded for weeks. It was the knowledge of the hurt I had caused. It was the long, slow process of rebuilding what I had damaged. That was a far more profound consequence than any temporary restriction. It taught me the weight of my actions. But perhaps the most important lesson was this: forgiveness is possible, and understanding can grow even from the deepest mistakes. My father, in his quiet way, showed me that. He didn't forget what I did. The cracks in the vase remained, but he chose to look beyond the mistake, to see the person, to teach rather than just to punish. He offered a path to redemption, and in walking that path, I learned about the resilience of love, the strength of family, and the enduring power of a second chance. That day, the day my dad walked in, felt like an ending. It was the end of a certain kind of childhood innocence, the end of the illusion that I could do no wrong, or that my actions had no real impact. The world suddenly seemed more complicated. My father, once a simple known figure, became a person with layers I hadn't imagined. My home, once a place of unquestioned safety, felt different, shaken by my own choices. It was a hard day, a day of shock and profound regret. But as time has passed, I see it differently. It was also a beginning, the start of a harder path, yes, but a more thoughtful one, a more aware one. It forced me to look at myself, at my motivations, at the impact I had on others. It was a painful awakening, but awakenings, even painful ones, can lead to growth. I started to think more before I acted, to consider consequences beyond myself, to understand that relationships are precious and require care and honesty. We never truly forget the moments that shake us to our core. They become part of our story, signposts on the map of our lives. They guide our future choices. They inform our understanding of the world. That afternoon in my bedroom with the scattered contents of a secret box is one such signpost for me. It reminds me of my fallibility, of the importance of trust, and of the quiet strength of my father. It's a memory tinged with shame, but also with gratitude, for the lessons it taught me. Sometimes the events that shock us the most are the ones that shape us most profoundly. They jolt us out of our complacency. They force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about others. They are not easy, they are not fun, but they are often necessary for growth, for understanding, for becoming a better version of ourselves. That day my dad walked in, and in the shocking aftermath, I began a journey, an unexpected path, towards a deeper understanding of life and of love.